I had just set down the last grocery bag when I saw him. Nathan stood in the entryway, keys dangling from his hand, grinning like a boy who'd just pulled a harmless prank. His wife, Alina, stood beside him in white sneakers and a cropped wool coat. Her hair swept back like she belonged on a magazine cover, not my front porch. "She'll just stay a while," he said, tossing the keys to her with ease. "It's still your place." Alina caught them without flinching. Her fingers closed around them like they'd always belonged there. "Thanks, babe," she said, flashing him that practiced smile. "I'll take good care of it." They both laughed, easy and unbothered, like this was normal, like I wasn't standing there holding a receipt in one hand and the weight of 22 years in the other. I stepped farther into the room, slow, deliberate. "You gave her my keys," I asked, not with anger, not even surprise, just curiosity. Nathan shrugged. "You said you didn't mind. She needs a quiet place to focus while I'm at work. And it's not like you're using all the space." Alina walked past me and set her purse on the hallway table. One of my grocery bags rested beside it. Carrots, brown rice, a tin of coffee. My groceries. My table. My home. "I see," I said softly. "Well, that's interesting, because I haven't lived here for 2 months." Nathan's smile faltered. Alina paused, one hand halfway to the coat hook. "What?" he asked, his tone still casual, but the undertone cracked. "I haven't lived here," I repeated. "Not since September." Alina looked at him. "Wait, then where have you been living?" I didn't answer right away. I walked into the kitchen, put the milk away. Everything felt both familiar and foreign, like walking through a version of your life that someone else had edited without permission. I turned back to face them. "Maybe we should sit down," I said. "There's more you need to understand." I didn't sit. I needed air. I stepped outside and let the screen door hush shut behind me. The autumn light was thin, cool, the kind that makes every shadow look longer than it is. I walked the stone path that wound along the garden bed, still half blooming, despite the season turning. The rosemary bushes needed trimming. The bird bath had gone dry again. 22 years of this. Mortgage payments that never came easy. Night shifts at the hospital, standing for 12 hours, catching a nap in the car before picking Nathan up from school. Scrubbing the baseboards on my day off. Replacing shingles after the last storm because hiring help always felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. And when Mark died, I didn't sell. I learned to fix the water heater. I learned what rust sounded like before a pipe burst. I stayed. I looked back toward the house. The kitchen window was still cracked open from this morning. I could see Alina standing there now, touching the countertop like she already owned it. Nathan hovered beside her, eyes trained on the floor. They weren't speaking. Maybe that was a good thing. I stepped back inside. Nathan looked up. "So, what do you mean you haven't lived here?" "I moved out," I said plainly. 2 months ago." Alina let out a small laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "But your clothes are here. Your car's here." "I left it all as it was," I replied. "For convenience." "Convenience," Nathan echoed. "This house isn't good anymore," I said, still calm. "I've been staying somewhere safer." Alina blinked fast like she was recalibrating. "Is this about the stairs again? Because I told Nathan we could install those stair grips. Or maybe hire a cleaner to come more often." "It's not about the stairs I cut in. It's about space." Nathan frowned. "You could have said something." I looked at him, then long and steady. "I'm saying it now." Neither of them spoke. And I could see it clearly. Neither of them knew what I had already done. It hadn't started with keys. It started with her books. One afternoon, I came home to find a row of hardcovers on the living room shelf, titles I didn't recognize. Something about marketing, 2 cookbooks I'd never opened, and a self-help memoir with gold lettering. Mine were gone. When I asked where they'd gone, Alina said she'd boxed them for safekeeping and set them in the hall closet. "I just thought the room needed a lighter feel," she'd said, gesturing at the cleared surfaces. Later that week, I reached for the cinnamon and found it moved, replaced with a tiny labeled jar from a brand I'd never buy. My paprika was missing. The salt had been swapped for pink crystals in a glass grinder. The other ones looked a bit dated, she offered with a laugh. I can get you a new set. It'll feel fresher. Fresh. Like this house was old bread. One evening, I walked in and found her standing in the middle of the dining room, squinting at the walls. We could knock that arch out, she said, mostly to Nathan. Open the space. And the flooring, imagine a matte oak. More neutral, more resale-friendly. He nodded, half listening. Just don't stress my mom with it. Oh, she's cool, she replied, not even turning to me. Right, Ina. I smiled. I always smiled, and I wrote it down that night, date time, the arch, the spices, the books. Not for revenge, for clarity. They were small things. Individual, they looked like generosity, like efficiency. But added together, they felt like an inventory. A quiet claiming. Then came the comment at breakfast when she said lightly, while buttering toast, "You should really consider a smaller place. This is a lot to keep up with at your age." Nathan didn't even pause chewing. "She's just being thoughtful," he said. I nodded. But after they left that day, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in weeks and found my mother's pearl brooch, missing. I checked the shelf above the laundry room and saw the tin where I kept the spare deed shifted. That's when I started locking my bedroom door. They invited me to brunch on a Sunday. A small place they liked, exposed brick walls, cold chairs, syrup in glass jars. I hadn't wanted to go, but Nathan insisted. Just to catch up, he said. I knew better. When Alina wore beige and lipstick before noon, something was coming. The waitress brought our orders pancakes, for Nathan some avocado thing, for Alina black coffee for me. I hadn't ordered food. They hadn't asked. Nathan got to it quickly. We've been thinking, he said, glancing at Alina. Maybe it's time we all live together. I stirred my coffee, careful not to look surprised. It just makes sense, he continued. You've got the space and we can help with things, groceries, maintenance. Alina pulled a folded sheet of paper from her bag and slid it across the table. A spreadsheet. She had highlighted rows, color-coded estimates, projected costs for painting, plumbing, even a new doorbell. I saw my name listed next to a column marked Original Owner. Alina spoke like she was pitching a business deal. We thought Nathan could use the master as his home office. It's got the best light and space for his equipment. I looked up. Where would I go? She didn't blink. The guest room has better morning light anyway. And it's closer to the kitchen, which is more convenient for you. Nathan nodded. We just want to make things easier for you, Mom. I folded the paper carefully and slid it back. Noted, I said. They smiled, pleased with how well it had gone. I sipped my coffee and let the noise of the cafe fill the silence between us. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I let them talk through timelines, budget lines, paint colors. I finished my coffee. I asked for the check, and as we stepped outside, Alina said, "This will be so good for all of us." I only nodded and told them I'd see them soon. Later that night, I opened the closet and checked the small fireproof box again. The deed was still there, for now. 2 months before the keys ever changed hands, I opened the utility closet to reset the water heater and saw it a dusting of gray-green spores along the back wall. At first, I blamed the poor lighting or my own tired eyes. But when I leaned closer, the smell hit me damp, sour, unmistakable. My throat tightened before I even realized I was holding my breath. I'd been waking up coughing for weeks. My chest felt heavy every morning. I blamed age, the weather stress. I blamed everything except the house itself. I called a specialist the next day. He arrived with a clipboard and a mask and disappeared into the crawl space and behind walls I'd stopped paying attention to years ago. When he returned, his expression was careful, too careful. "You shouldn't stay here," he said. "Not until everything's stripped and restored. This kind of mold. It grows quietly, but it hurts fast." The house I'd kept standing all these years had turned against me in silence. I packed a single suitcase that night. A few clothes, my wallet, important papers. I didn't touch the framed photos, the quilts, the furniture. I didn't lift a thing from its place. I left the shelves exactly as they'd always been. No gaps. No missing spaces to signal a life removed. I rented a furnished apartment 3 miles away, just enough distance to breathe without coughing, close enough to drive by the old house if I needed to. The apartment was small but clean. The air didn't sting my lungs. The windows opened without sticking. The quiet felt unfamiliar at first, then restful. I didn't tell Nathan. I didn't want the sympathy that isn't sympathy. I didn't want Alina's solutions. I didn't want explanations questioned or minimized. I wanted clarity. And I wanted control over when they learned the truth. So I hired a weekly cleaner to dust the house water. The plants keep the illusion intact. From the outside, nothing looked different. My mail still arrived. My lights still went on at dusk on their timers. I let the house play its part. And I waited for the moment the illusion would finally matter. Once the specialist confirmed what I already feared, I made my next decision quietly. I searched for companies that handled distressed or compromised properties, firms that bought homes as they were without theatrics or pity. I found one based in Salem known for restoring older structures rather than tearing them down. Their reviews were minimal, but the tone was consistent, efficient, discreet. That was what I needed. I scheduled a walkthrough for the following week. The representative, a woman named Artis, arrived with a small tablet and a calm, unreadable face. She asked questions without judgment: square footage, prior repairs, ventilation history. She checked the water heater closet, measured moisture levels, took photos of the affected areas. When she was done, she said, "We can make a cash offer by Monday." She did. It was fairer than I expected. Fairer than I'd hoped. I accepted it before I could talk myself out of it. 2 weeks later, I signed the deed in a quiet office overlooking a parking lot. No ceremony. No witnesses except the notary and Artis. It felt strangely easy considering how long it had taken me to pay that house off. I expected to feel grief. Instead, I felt something closer to steadiness. I didn't tell Nathan. I didn't tell anyone. After the sale, I kept everything running as if nothing had changed. I maintained the automatic payments. I updated the mailing service so my letters continued to arrive there before forwarding to the apartment. I told the cleaner to come Thursdays instead of Tuesdays. The illusion wasn't for them, it was for me to keep things aligned until the moment the truth would need to surface. Every weekend, I drove past the house, slowing just enough to see if anything had shifted. It looked exactly the same: quiet porch, trimmed shrubs, the familiar pale siding. Not a hint that its ownership had changed hands. The restoration company scheduled structural work for early spring. Until then, they left the property untouched, a still photograph, waiting for its next chapter. Nathan and Alina never questioned a thing. They assumed I was simply around moving between errands and routines. And I let them believe it. I wasn't invited, but I came anyway. I parked 2 houses down, walked the familiar path, and opened the door with the spare key they'd forgotten I still had. Laughter floated from the dining room. I smelled roasted chicken, something citrusy. Voices: Alina's, her parents', Nathan's, rising and falling in smooth, polished rhythm. The table was mine. The heavy oak one I'd saved for. Across 3 tax seasons. The cutlery, real silver, passed down from my aunt, glinted under the pendant light. Alina was seated at the head, casually slicing bread as if she'd always belonged there. Her parents, dressed like catalog pages, looked up as I entered. Nathan stood, halfway startled. "Oh, Alina," said her voice light, her smile already in place. We weren't sure you'd be joining. I didn't sit. I didn't remove my coat. I wasn't invited, I said. Alina tilted her head like it was all a game. We thought it'd be a nice chance to talk through some plans. Plans, I echoed, stepping farther into the room. I looked at the walls, still the same faded eggshell. The photos were gone, replaced by generic prints. Even the hallway rug was missing. We've been thinking of small changes. Alina continued pouring wine into her mother's glass. Better flow. Maybe open the space between the kitchen and living area. Her father nodded. This home has good bones. It just needs vision. Nathan watched me carefully. We'd of course wait until you're comfortable. Nothing's happening without your say. I walked to the table and ran my hand along the edge. There was a scratch near the corner still there from when Nathan dropped his backpack too hard in 8th grade. And when do the renovations begin? I asked. Nathan hesitated. Next week, maybe. Just measurements first. Nothing final. I met his eyes and smiled, calm, steady. You'll want to check with the owner first. The room held its breath. Alina blinked. I said taking my hand off the table, you're making plans in a house that doesn't belong to you? Not anymore. Their silence told me they finally understood that something had shifted. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the envelope I'd brought with me. It was thin, plain, nothing dramatic. But the moment I set it on the table, the room seemed to tighten around it. Nathan, I said, tapping it once with my finger. This is for you. He looked confused as he slid it open. The papers inside made a soft rustle, an unremarkable sound for something that would rearrange the next several minutes of their lives. His eyes skimmed the first page, then the second. When he reached the highlighted section, his breath caught. Sale confirmation. He read aloud. Change of deed. Mom, what is this? Alina leaned forward, snatching at the papers before he could fully process them. Her eyes darted across each line, widening with every word. No, she whispered. No, this isn't. There's no way I folded my hands. It's accurate. The house was sold. The ownership transferred. The locks will be changed on Friday. Her face drained like someone had pulled the color out with a cloth. Nathan looked up at me, bewildered. You sold it. Without saying anything. Yes, I said simply. Because nobody asked anything. The room went silent. I explained it plainly the way I used to relay diagnoses in the ER. The mold behind the water heater. The specialist's assessment. The risk to my lungs. How long the spores had likely been there. How the house needed full remediation. How I'd moved out for my health, not out of spite. I explained the weight I'd been carrying alone. Nathan swallowed hard, looking younger than I'd seen him in years. Alina opened her mouth, something between panic and protest, but I raised a hand before she could shape it into words. I'm not here to argue, I said. These are just the facts. She sank back in her chair, silent. Nathan's hands curled around the paper's knuckles, white as if holding them tighter would somehow undo what they said. I watched him quietly, steadily. There was more he needed to understand, and this was only the beginning. Nathan followed me out the door, the echo of his steps just behind mine. I didn't turn around until I reached the walkway. He stood there, eyes sharp with confusion, arms stiff at his sides. I thought you needed help, he said. No, I replied. You thought wrong. You never asked. His mouth opened closed. The silence between us wasn't new, it had just finally found a name. You could have said something, he muttered. This feels like betrayal. I looked at him. Really looked. The same boy who used to fall asleep in the back seat after soccer practice now stood before me grown and angry, not at the truth, but at being left out of it. You made plans with my things, I said. That's not love. That's assumption. From the porch, Alina stood frozen still, clutching the keys. Her face was pale, stunned, as if the house had slipped from under her feet. Because it had. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, deflating. We just wanted you to be comfortable. Then why, I asked quietly, did I feel so disposable? His breath caught. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list the hours I spent scrubbing that kitchen floor or the number of night shifts it took to afford the down payment. I didn't ask him about the locked bedroom door or the things that slowly vanished. I didn't need to. Everything had already been said the moment he handed her the keys. He looked away. Behind him, Alina shifted slightly, her hand closing tighter around the useless metal in her palm. For the first time, she didn't speak. She didn't offer a smile or a deflection or a plan. Maybe she finally understood what she'd never owned. Nathan turned back to me. So, what now? I looked toward the driveway, the one I'd shoveled through 3 winters alone, the one he and Alina had just weeks ago considered widening. That depends, I said. Do you want to know me or just manage me? He didn't answer. But his silence at last was honest. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I closed the door behind me and exhaled. My apartment smelled like lemon soap and quiet. 1 bedroom, 1 key. Nothing out of place unless I moved it. Nothing missing unless I gave it away. I hung my coat and walked into the kitchen. The kettle sat where I'd left it on the back burner, clean ready. I filled it with water and set it to boil. Not because someone else needed tea. Not because anyone was coming. Just because I wanted it. The mug I chose was chipped at the rim, but it was mine. I sat at my small table near the window. Outside, the light from a pharmacy sign blinked steady and soft. Inside, nothing blinked, buzzed, or asked me to move out of the way. The quiet didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. My phone lit up. Nathan. His message was short. Can I visit this weekend? I stared at the screen for a moment before typing. If you come as a son who asks, not a man who assumes yes. I didn't send more than that. I didn't explain. I didn't ask how he was or if Alina still held the keys. Some things can't be handed back. Some things lose their shape when held wrong for too long. I sipped the tea slowly. It was too hot, but I didn't rush. I let the steam rise into the space I now called my own. I looked around, not at decorations or upgrades, but at choices. I had chosen this place. Its stillness, its air, its freedom. No more shrinking in rooms where I once stood tall. No more quiet that came from being silenced. No more being useful before being seen. This wasn't escape. It wasn't a fresh start. It was a return to myself. And this time, I wasn't asking anyone for permission.